From the recent wildfires in Los Angeles to many others across the state of California in recent years, we have reported on the lives lost and the thousands of homes burned to the ground and billions of dollars in property damage. And now there is a real concern about wildfire damage inflicted on soil across the state. Scorched soil making it difficult for vegetation and ground cover to grow back. Soil increasingly vulnerable to erosion that comes after wildfires and rains, quickly leading to mudslides and affecting root systems and organic matter that keeps soil healthy and productive.
Fire started and burned to the north,
says soil scientist Garrett Lyles, a former wildland firefighter back in the day himself, who today teaches soil science here at California State University, Chico, in Northern California, a region of the state ravaged by massive wildfires over the years. A few miles off campus, Lyles shows me damage inflicted on this soil recently by a wildfire.
Fire burned right up to this edge of the road here. And you can see how all this soil is very loosely held together and doesn't provide any protection against water that would be flowing down slope. Soils are much more complex and interesting than people think. Like, we drive on them, our houses are built on them, we walk on them, that type of thing. We play sports.
The soils that animals walk on around the world, including his family pooch, Churro.
You gotta act like you're not pulling, Churro. You're supposed to just look like you know what you're doing.
His concern for soil is rooted in his past as a firefighter and from the way his parents raised him.
Caring about the planet in any way that I could, and then taking my first soils class, which, funny, I teach that same class now. So I took that class at Chico State, and now I'm the instructor of that class. I always like when I can use the word germane, right? Germane means like pertaining to. So this is germane. And it really hit me how important soils were as a regulator of the world and a provider and a supporter of humanity.
Deer?
Soils bring together all the major cycles on the planet: the water cycle, the air gas cycle, the atmosphere. It's an interface with the solid earth, the geology of the planet, and it regulates biology. Both things that fix carbon and energy, plants, autotrophs, and all the other organisms on the planet that consume the products of the autotrophs, heterotrophs like us and microbes and things like that. So soils bring all of those things together and regulate how much gas is exchanging from soil and plants back to the atmosphere. The soils are the largest reservoir of carbon on the planet, drawing down or storing carbon that we've emitted through industrialization of humanity, through the burning of fossil carbon. So people are looking at soils as a place for carbon to be stored.
And wildfires release that stored carbon into the atmosphere. And when too much carbon is released into the atmosphere, human health, he says, is directly threatened by toxic gases. That's why the impact wildfires have on soil has become such a big issue.
And when we talk about wildfire, that's a huge issue, because when we have a large wildfire, we're emitting all that stored carbon in the biomass, and often carbon that would also be in surface soils, back to the atmosphere in an uncontrolled way.
Simply put, he says, the importance of soil in our lives cannot be underestimated.
Soils are not just the brown stuff that ends up on your shoe, right? It's an incredible universe that you can spend the rest of your life enjoying if you find a way to it. We interact with soils every day, so from the time you're born until the time you die, you're interacting with soils in one way or another, right? Either through direct contact, they allow for things to grow.
One of Lyle's students, Ed Fortenberry here, knows firsthand the devastation of wildfires after his home and most of his community in Paradise, California, 20 minutes east of campus, was burned to the ground in 2018. Ed was a wildland firefighter himself at the time who actually fought other wildfires in the region before the Paradise Fire. And at the time the Paradise Fire broke out, or the Camp Fire as it's known, Ed happened to be away in Hawaii on an internship about farming.
I was a firefighter at the time. I was on a work internship in Maui, right? And I was studying small-scale organic farming with bananas. And my friend was calling me, telling me you need to catch a flight back so that way you can come get your stuff. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, the town of Paradise has been destroyed. You're probably gonna come home with nothing. I called my grandparents. They said, Eddie, you might as well stay there because we can't help you. You have nothing to come home to.
The fire in Paradise burned 155,000 acres. 85 residents died here. 50,000 others were displaced. 18,000 homes and structures were destroyed, causing $16 billion in damage. The loss of homes here, to give some perspective, was double the amount lost in the Palisades fire in early 2025.
So I went back, I was helping with search and rescue. So we were looking for missing persons. And that's kind of why I decided to go back to school. I was emotionally numb from the situation.
Ed ultimately continued his schooling here with soil scientist Garrett Lyles and is planning to start a regenerative land management company to help improve the health of damaged soil, to help bring soils back to life. And through it all, Ed says he's learned firsthand what wildfires do to soil.
Considering the climate that we're in nowadays, things burn hotter, they burn quicker, and it's not as slow of a burn. So it gets down into different horizon levels in the soil, which can cause a lot of different things. So it can destroy the seed banks in the soil, it makes certain nutrients unavailable.
Many residents after fires worry that new buildings could be built on contaminated soil, increasing the risks that residents and workers may be exposed to toxic chemicals by inhaling dust. Health officials have warned that wildfire ash from burned buildings can contain hazardous substances, including cancer-causing arsenic and brain-damaging lead. Experts warn that the pace of rebuilding should not outpace safety precautions, such as testing the soil for toxins before rebuilding can occur. Ed Fortenberry says that as far as working with soil in general, it may not be for everyone, or, as the pun goes,
it's the dirtiest topic in the world.
But
yeah, it's where life happens.
He says the science of soil, of protecting it, keeping it healthy, and how important that is to human beings is not always easily grasped by young people in his generation.
So how about you?
Who he suggests may want to better understand how important soil is to all of us. At least he says that's what he tries to share with his friends about soil.
Get dirty. So get outside, start to look at your feet, look at the ground, get closer to the ground, really. There's different ecosystems all around us that we can go and see.
Soil scientist Garrett Lyles says with all the wildfire damage being done to the earth, society can no longer afford to just ignore soil or consider soil, as many people do, just a bunch of dirt. Saying that offends old school scientists when they hear people calling it dirt.
Old school soil scientists are offended by the concept of something being called dirt, right? Like that's a four-letter word in the truest sense. I don't really subscribe to that. I think that as long as people understand that it's important and that it's there, I don't care what you call it. I just want you to know that it's valuable and that we all rely on it on a day-to-day basis.
And on a positive note, says Lyles, soils scorched by wildfires are not dead and no longer useful.
It's really hard to kill or make a soil become inappropriate for use.
For example, just a few months after one major fire in this region, soils are generating new vegetation and ground cover. He says Mother Nature is a powerful force when it comes to soil recovering from wildfires since the beginning of time.
Wildfires are a natural component of this ecosystem, right? Either from the lighting of fires by indigenous peoples in times before European colonization, or naturally occurring from lightning strikes and things like that. These California and many landscapes around the world are fire adapted. They've been molded and shaped by fire, and the species and the plants that you will see behind me or around me are adapted to fire. And you might see some green in the background, not just from living trees, but new things sprouting up and growing from the soil after a small rain we had recently.
Lyle says wildfires in some respects are necessary events that burn off excess vegetation that, if it isn't burned off, ultimately becomes excess fire fuel, causing even bigger fires when they come. So he says a wildfire at times can sort of be viewed like a haircut in the forest.
Yeah, absolutely, or burning your beard off to keep it at a reasonable spot, but not so hot that it burns your skin, right? It is a really good analogy when you start to think of it. Like, you can maintain your facial hair or your hair, but if you start cutting it too close, you can get razor burn, or if you're burning it, you could burn your skin. And that's a similar situation with soil, right? So we talk about low intensity, short duration fires. It can be burning just the grass on top of the soil surface and really not ever doing much damage to the soil itself. Contrast that with a large log sitting on the ground burning hot for days. And then the temperature and the heat from that fire can penetrate deep into the soil and do, considerable amount of damage to soil structure, to liberate carbon through combustion that was stored in soil and nutrients. And so that intense, long duration fire really can be a problem versus that low intensity, low duration fire.
The problem today, he says, is there are far more wildfires burning than ever before and damaging soil around the world. That unfortunately may continue, he says, as long as there is drought and water shortages brought on by the burning of fossil fuels that has caused global warming and climate change. He says soil's important role as the very foundation of so much life on our planet that both humans and wildlife depend on must be spared the constant devastation of wildfires in the future. Garrett Lyles knows all this as a soil scientist in California's fire zone. And the laid-back Lyles will no doubt continue to be an important go-to soil expert for many journalists in the years ahead.
It's all about finding local talent to help you get what you need.
Absolutely.
I'm a soundbite machine, man, I'm telling you.
And Lyles very seriously says there appears to be no end in sight with these wildfires and their impact on soil.